For more than half his life, Thach Sun walked the thin boundary between the living and the dead. He was a diviner of yin and yang, a man who read fate through trigrams, calmed restless spirits, and corrected distorted geomancy. Wherever misfortune struck, his name was quietly spoken among those who truly understood. He was not famous, yet within the hidden world, his accuracy was feared and respected. But as the years passed, Thach Sun came to realize a truth no diviner could escape. To coy the will of heaven is to borrow against one's own life. Each divination shortened his lifespan. Each act of defying death layered karma upon karma. When his hair turned white and his body weakened, he finally made a decision. He would seal his divination, withdraw from the occult world, and return to his hometown to live out his remaining years in peace. On the night before his departure, a strange dream descended upon him. In a mist-covered mountain forest, beneath moonlit bamboo shadows, a white fox with 8 tails stood upright like a human. Its eyes shimmered with intelligence far beyond that of any beast. Bowing deeply, it spoke in a human voice, pleading with Thach Sun to cast one final divination. The fox claimed it had cultivated in seclusion for centuries, yet still lacked the final merit to complete its transformation. A terrifying heavenly tribulation awaited it. Without guidance, it would surely perish. If Thach Sun would help, the fox promised boundless rewards. Wealth, fortune, even extended longevity. Thach Sun knew fox spirits were masters of temptation. Yet he also knew such encounters were exceedingly rare. One final divination, he reasoned. One last act before retirement. In that fleeting moment of hesitation, the seed of calamity was planted. Thach Sun awoke before dawn, his heart unsettled. The image of the 8-tailed fox refused to fade. Unable to ignore the pull, he took his compass and climbed the mountain behind the village, the very place from his dream. But the fox was nowhere to be found. Instead, beneath the pale moonlight, he saw a woman bathing in a mountain spring. Her figure was graceful, her long hair floating atop the water. The sight struck him like a sudden illusion. When she turned, Thach Sun noticed her slightly swollen belly. She was already pregnant. The woman wept bitterly, claiming she had been abandoned and had nowhere left to go. She accused Thach Sun of seeing her body and demanded responsibility, insisting that without him, she would have no reason to live. Every instinct warned him to turn away. This was not destiny, it was deviation. Yet his mind was clouded, his resolve weakened by the night's lingering dream. He had already missed heaven's timing, and once a single step strays from fate's path, all that follows becomes irreversible. Thach Sun brought her back to the village. They lived together without ceremony, without recognition. 7 months later, Thach Jiao was born. Though the villagers whispered that the child was not his, Thach Sun accepted the boy as his own. He gave the child his surname, raised him with care, and never once showed regret. Yet a bond formed through misaligned fate can never be whole. One stormy night, not long after childbirth, the woman disappeared without a trace, leaving neither explanation nor farewell. Holding the infant beneath the dark sky, Thach Sun understood clearly. This was retribution. The price of abandoning heaven's order had come due. Thach Jiao grew up under Thach Sun's protection, yet peace never truly accompanied him. When the boy turned 8 years old, disaster finally struck. One summer afternoon, Thach Jiao played near an irrigation canal outside the village. When he climbed back onto the bank, His clothes had vanished. Panicked and on the verge of tears, he was approached by a well-dressed woman who claimed she had spare clothing in her car. The clothes fit him perfectly, unnaturally so. Though a chill crept over him, he was too young to understand the danger. The moment Thatch Sun saw the outfit, his face drained of all color. For the first time in years, rage erupted from him. He ordered Thatch Jiao to remove the clothes immediately. They were not ordinary garments. They were mortuary clothes used by beast handlers, a sinister talisman meant to steal a living person's lifespan. That very night, Thatch Sun erected an altar in the courtyard. He drew a ceiling formation on the ground and instructed Thatch Jiao to sit within it, warning him that no matter what happened, he must not step outside. As midnight arrived, violent winds tore through the village. The gate burst open, and two towering figures emerged from the darkness, Oxhead and Horseface, emissaries of the underworld. They declared that Tha Jiao's lifespan had been altered through forbidden means. According to the ledger of life and death, the boy was already meant to perish. At the brink of death, Thatch Sun stepped forward, and the truth was finally revealed. He tore away his outer robe, exposing a purple dragon sigil etched across his back. The air trembled, thunder echoed. The seal of the Zhuanyuan lineage, long thought lost, had reappeared. A man who sought retirement was forced to defy heaven once more, not for glory, not for power, but to protect the child whose very existence was born of his own mistake. And thus the cycle of fate began anew. The night grew unnaturally cold. As Oxhead and Horseface stepped into the courtyard, the lantern flames extinguished one by one, leaving only moonlight and shadows. Their voices echoed like iron scraping stone as they announced the decree of the underworld. Thatch Jiao's lifespan had already been borrowed, his soul marked for retrieval. This was not an arrest, it was an execution long overdue. Thatch Sun stood between them and the child without hesitation. With a calm that defied the terror of the moment, he raised his hand and crushed the talisman before him. The ground trembled as ancient runes surfaced, glowing faintly beneath the earth. The two ghost envoys paused, sensing something deeply wrong. When Thatch Sun removed his robe, a purple dragon sigil unfurled across his back, its scales shimmering as though alive. The air itself seemed to bow. "I am the 18th generation inheritor of the Zhuanyuan lineage," he declared. "This child's fate is bound to mine." The name Zhuanyuan carried weight even in the underworld. The ghost envoys hesitated, yet duty bound them forward. Steel chains lashed out, carrying the chill of death itself. Thatch Sun countered with a single step, his palms slicing through the air, releasing a wave of primordial ki that shattered the chains like brittle ice. The clash was brief, but devastating. Every exchange drained Thatch Sun's vitality. He knew well, this was not a battle he could truly win, only one he could delay by paying an unbearable price. Finally, he formed a final seal with trembling fingers. A violet dragon seal descended from the void, coiling around Thatch Jiao like a living guardian. To activate it, Thatch Sun burned away 30 years of his remaining lifespan, offering it directly to heaven as collateral. The dragon roared silently. The underworld ledger shifted. Oxhead and Horseface retreated, leaving behind a warning. For 18 years, the child is protected. After that, his life will belong to fate once more. From that night onward, Thatch Jiao became the 19th generation inheritor of the Zhuanyuan line. bound to a destiny he had never chosen. Thach Sun collapsed before dawn. Though alive, he aged decades in a single night. His hair turned snow white, his breath shallow and uneven. He knew his time was nearly spent. Calling Thach Jiao to his bedside, he delivered his final instructions, not as a father, but as a master passing on heaven's burden. "For 18 years, he said softly, the seal will protect you. After that, your life and death will no longer be sheltered. Whether you live or perish will depend on your own choices." Then came the warnings, each heavier than the last. First, travel north. Your path lies in the land of the Black Dragon and the 7 Tigers. Avoid the south, no matter the temptation. Second, never intervene for those born under the ox or horse signs. Helping them will entangle you in karma you cannot repay. Third, your destined bond will reveal itself through a crimson mole between the brows. She will be your anchor and your greatest trial. Thach Jiao memorized every word, though he barely understood their meaning. At dawn, Thach Sun passed away quietly, seated upright, his expression serene. With his death, the courtyard returned to silence, yet the weight of destiny settled heavily upon the boy's shoulders. Thus ended the life of a man who defied heaven one last time. Years passed. On the morning Thach Jiao turned 18, he packed his belongings and descended the mountain, carrying only a worn satchel and his master's final teachings. His first destination was Bak Son, a bustling town nestled against ancient burial hills. There, fate wasted no time revealing its cruelty. At a small roadside inn, Thach Jiao encountered Chu Vun Vun, a woman whose presence carried a strange imbalance. The moment he stepped near her, a sharp stench filled his senses, the unmistakable smell of a coffin, damp wood mixed with decay. That night, his chest burned with pain. The diagnosis was clear. Corpse poison had entered his body. Following the trail, Thach Jiao uncovered a vital clue, a piece of white mutton fat jade, recently unearthed and still carrying residual yin energy. Such jade could only come from an ancient grave, one that had been disturbed against geomantic law. The seal protecting him had ended. The human world had opened its jaws. And Thach Jiao realized then, his true journey, one of life, death, karma, and choice, had only just begun. After obtaining the clue from the mutton fat jade tainted with corpse energy, Thach Jiao became certain that the true source of the calamity did not lie among the living but beneath the earth. Carrying his compass, he spent days traversing the outskirts of Bak Son, reading the flow of mountains and water, tracing the hidden paths of dragon veins. For 3 consecutive days, he practiced dividing the veins and fixing the grave, aligning heavenly stems with earthly branches. At last, his gaze settled upon an unremarkable mountain range, whose aura gathered inward rather than dispersing, Mount Bach Bao. It was a classic formation of a concealed dragon, humble on the surface, immense in power below. Following the vein deeper, Thach Jiao discovered an ancestral tomb that had been unlawfully disturbed. Though ancient, the grave's feng shui layout was flawless, unmistakably crafted by a master of a bygone era. The weathered tombstone bore a single surname, Shen. It was there that he met Shen Anran. She wore plain clothing, her features gentle yet refined, her presence unusually balanced. When she lifted her head to look at him, a crimson mole gleamed between her brows, vivid like a drop of fresh blood. In that instant, the final words of Thach Sun echoed in Thach Jiao's mind. The destined bond had arrived. Before any conversation could continue, a procession approached. At its head stood a middle-aged man clad in an ornate Taoist robe, his bearing grandiose. He introduced himself as Bian Chongyang, the Four Manifestations Heavenly Master. Bian Chongyang scanned Tach Jiao with open disdain. To him, this young man was nothing more than a rural novice who had learned a few tricks and dared to meddle in the affairs of the Shen family. Tach Jiao spoke calmly, issuing a single warning, the ancestral. Tomb must not be moved. If disturbed further, disaster would follow. Bian Chongyang burst into laughter, dismissing the words as fear-mongering born of jealousy. He mocked Tach Jiao's youth and lack of reputation, asserting that true mastery came with age and renown. Without argument, Tach Jiao turned to leave. Before departing, he delivered one final sentence, cold and measured. The grave has already been disturbed. Corpse energy is gathering. When calamity strikes, do not say you were not warned. 3 days later, the warning came true. Ignoring all counsel, the Shen family proceeded to relocate their ancestral tomb under Bian Chongyang's guidance. That very night, yin winds howled through the hills, and black clouds swallowed the moon. The corpse energy sealed beneath the earth for decades erupted violently. The first victim was Shen Dongming, the patriarch of the family. He collapsed with a raging fever, his body icy to the touch, skin ashen, fingernails turning dark purple. This was unmistakably corpse poison penetrating the organs, already embedded deep within his bloodline. Panicking, Bian Chongyang hastily erected an altar and attempted to suppress the poison using blessed water. But blessed water cleanses. It cannot restrain rampant corpse energy. Upon contact with yang energy, the corpse poison retaliated even more ferociously. Within moments, Shen Dongming vomited blood, his breathing weakened, life hanging by a thread. Only then did Bian Chongyang realize he had made a catastrophic mistake. Amid the chaos, Tach Jiao arrived. He brought no altar, no elaborate talismans. From his sleeve, he produced only a set of Zhuanyuan golden needles. Each needle carried an ancient resonance, emitting a faint golden glow as it sliced through the air. In a matter of breaths, the needles pierced key acupoints, sealing the corpse energy pathways and forcibly preserving Shen Dongming's remaining life force. The poison was driven back, and color slowly returned to the old man's face. Before the stunned onlookers, Bian Chongyang's facade crumbled. The title of Four Manifestations Heavenly Master was exposed as an illusion. From that moment on, Tach Jiao's power and standing within the local occult world were undeniable. In the aftermath, hidden truths of the Shen family surfaced. Shen Anran's grandmother was known for favoring sons over daughters, long neglecting and suppressing the women of the family. Years earlier, this cruelty had driven Anran's mother into despair and eventual disappearance. As fragments of the past emerged, Tach Jiao felt an unsettling familiarity. Certain details, certain mannerisms, stirred memories long buried. Slowly, a suspicion took shape. The woman who abandoned Anran's mother might be connected to the woman who had vanished from his own life. Bloodlines and destinies began to intertwine, revealing a far deeper secret waiting to be unearthed after the Shen family incident. Tach Jiao ceased wandering. He opened a modest shop in Bak Son, hanging a simple signboard that read Bak Clan Pavilion. With this, he officially stepped into the hidden world. On the day of its opening, the first visitor crossed the threshold. It was Bian Chongyang himself, haggard and humbled. bowing as he begged for help. A false heavenly master, now kneeling before the man he once ridiculed. Tach Jiao gazed beyond the doorway, his expression unreadable. He understood clearly this was only the beginning. A long chain of tribulations, rivalries, karmic debts, and ancient secrets was slowly unfolding. The occult world had finally opened its gates,